You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Andy, what's up, man?
What's up, brother?
We're back in action.
Here we go.
This is full-fledged
Here we
shoe
go.
and show.
Here we
fun.
go.
Are you ready?
I'm juiced.
Are you juiced?
I'm juiced. I'm ready.
Like OJ juiced?
Exactly.
Or like steroid juiced?
Yeah, exactly.
Shoe juiced?
All the above.
All the above. On drugs?
Exactly.
Well, I am juiced
Caffeine.
as well. Jasmine, are you juiced?
Off of water, yes.
Off of water?
Yes.
Coconut water.
Hydrated.
Coconut water? Nice. Well, you know what? I'm excited about this episode because one of the things that we pride ourselves in as an organization is being global, focused on full-fledged footwear production globally.
Right.
And it takes a village to get a pair of shoes to a consumer in the U.S. To ensure its quality.
Right.
It arrives on time, that the factories are thinking more and more constructively about how to produce those shoes. And oftentimes the brands, our members, they have some of that expertise in-house, and sometimes they have to go out of house, if you
Right.
will, to pull that in. And that's why I'm excited we have our speaker on today.
Who's our speaker?
Our speaker is Jose Suarez, who's the founder and CEO of Impactiva, which is one of the cooler names, I think, for our
Impactiva.
Exactly, for our companies that we work with. Jose, thanks for coming on Shoe and Show. We've known you for a long time, but I'm glad to finally get you on the program. How are you, my friend?
Very good, thanks.
Good.
Hi, Andy.
Hey, how's it going? Things going all right?
Fantastic.
Awesome. You
Yes,
guys are doing some
all-
good stuff, man.
Thank you. Trying to transform our industry, help them meet the challenges of the world of e-commerce and competitors like Amazon. So
Man,
excited to help give some insights.
that's great. I think we're all trying to figure that out, Jose. And let's wind before we kind of solve the world's e-commerce problem, because I do want to talk to you about that a lot. Talk to us about Impactiva, who you guys are as the total quality assurance outfit that many of our brands work with. What's your mission? What's the vision that you have for the organization? And tell us some of the things that you guys do.
Well, we're 15 years old, Matt, and our initial mission was oriented around bringing quality and quality optimization to the factory floor for the brands and retailers we represent, primarily in Europe and the United States. And it was all about producing the product right from the start. So it was more quality assurance than quality control. We're in the testing, inspection, certification industry. Most of our competitors are about checking the product at the end. And we built a company that's basically founded on an industrial engineering mentality with very high level ethos of honesty and transparency. And with results of last year, claims to our factories of the product that we control for our brands and retailers were 2,500 pairs for every million inspected, which is like 99.75%. But I think we're undergoing, because of what we talked about, the pressures of the marketplace and transformation. We've been preaching for a while that the factories and our industry and what we call a production chain had to start transform itself and become more efficient. So I think the new vision for 2019 is how can we help the industry assume and absorb the new challenges we are faced with. And I think it's all around education and educating what we call the artisans on the factory floor. So our new vision is how can we use educational tools and digitalization of data and information on the shop floor to really what we call activate or engage the artisans, which are the workers, operators on the factory floor, we call artisans, so that they can really start using their minds and not not only their arms and legs, which unfortunately is what we've done with them for decades or 100 plus years since our industry's inception.
Yeah, no, I mean, as you kind of outline your goal for 2019, one of the things that's been on top of our mind as we think through what we need to do as an organization in support of our industry in 2019 is this transformation word, right? It's a word that might be overused, but we feel like a lot of the disruption and all the things that have been happening over the last few years, people are just kind of used to the status quo being disruptive, and so how are they transforming against some of those currents? And oftentimes it's too hard when you are an organization to internally think about how do you change on the fly because you're trying to sell shoes. And if the model isn't not entirely broken, you're trying to adhere to it. So when Impactiva comes in, you're kind of a fresh set of eyes on these things. And so it's so important to have critical thought on.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, it's beyond just the two Bobs in office space, right? It's like how do you advise in an effective way to a company that feels like it's already successful?
I think Jose's right. Like the workers on the factory floor have been treated as almost robots, and there's problems that occur, and they're told to keep going, and they're not giving they're not empowered if they see something to fix it and think about that and do those things. And I think that the industry's been guilty of basically, designing and focus on development, and then the production's the factory's problem, right? We want these pairs, we want them at this time and at this cost. You figure it out, and it's kind of left them in no man's land. And now, as Amazon's eating everybody's lunch, and speed to market's key, and quality assurance is more and more key to the product. You have to have someone like Impactiva that are helping kind of pull these people back into the fold and talk about ecosystems and talk about how we're all in this together, and give the factory the tools and resources and ability to feel engaged, connected, and educated. Am I right, Jose?
Yeah, you're dead on, Andy. The issue is, and that's what we've been preaching now for a while, is that the brand and retailers want to have a relationship with the factory, but it's a transactional relationship up to now, more so in apparel than in the footwear industry. But we believe that the only way to survive in the future, really, because when you talk about Amazon and increase in market share, and there's other e-commerce platforms, we believe that brands and retailers really have to transform and acquire, either through companies like Impactiva or their own, acquire the people and the knowledge to be able to push the factories to transform. And I call this owning, between quotes. So it's basically what Adidas and Nike have done for more than 10 years. They have factories and they own them in the sense that they ask them to improve on a continuous basis. Most brands and retailers, and there's few exceptions, the Colarises of the world, et cetera, that have done this successfully. And I believe that if you don't do that, there's going to be a big problem in surviving and dealing with the, like you said, Andy, the speed, the quality, the productivity. As we all know, when you walk through one of our factories, how many people do you see just sitting waiting for products? How many shoes do you see that have defects? And like you said, Andy, the shoes just continue to pass, and nobody has any accountability or discipline or inspiration or understanding of the impact of their actions. And this is where I think we have to, and we're using the word activate, like you just said, robots. And we have to flip them on and turn them into human beings and make them proud to be artisans and be part of the puzzle, and not just, turning a screw on a nut like Model T Ford 100 years ago.
Are there cultural barriers to doing that? And I'm overly generalizing, but what you'll hear about the U.S. is that everyone's their own entrepreneur, everyone critically thinks, everyone is creative, everyone's a engineer in waiting, everyone's got ideas, everyone feels the opportunity to push back, vocalize, and to engage and interact. And in Asia, not so much. I mean, even when we have a workshop, here in the U.S., a training, you'll spend an hour answering questions. Jose, you'll be on a panel and people will have an hour and be peppering you with questions. Then you go to Asia and it's crickets. And are there cultural barriers, as you see from your vantage point, that preclude companies from realizing this and trying to figure out a better way to do it?
That's a great question. It's about change management and the culture involved in change management. And, it comes back to creativity. And, I used to think when I lived in China at the beginning of 2000s, I had that impression, but everything more and more I read, Matt, how many patents? I think Microsoft's office in Shanghai has more patents than everything else they generate worldwide. So I think that is changing, and that might have been a repercussion, especially in China, because of the educational system and centralized communism that they came out of. But if you look at our staff in our Dongguan office, we sit down and brainstorm the ideas that come from our Indians, Americans, or Chinese. It's not a huge difference. It's all about empowering them. And the problem is that the typical environment is, just shut up and use your hands to do the cementing or the stitching. But if you start changing the cultures, and that's what we have realized, this isn't about going and implementing tools like line balancing or figuring out the optimal layout. This is about change management. And how do you go about activating, engaging not only the artisans, but at the beginning you need the middle managers, right? The line supervisors and department managers, because they're the ones that have to change their attitudes on how they deal and engage and activate the artisans on the shop floor. So I think it is doable, but it is difficult, because how do you change the minds of the leaders? And that is the big bottleneck that we have in the industry. And that's the component that we are facing with our change management techniques when we go in there with our consulting and in the future with our digital platforms.
Yeah, walk us through let's break it down just to kind of operationalize what you actually do. So I'm XYZ factory in Fujian in outside Putian, and I call Jose and I say, Jose, I need help in this factory. What happens next? Walk us through that process.
Okay, the first step is if you're a brand retailer, we have to understand your value drivers and 3-year operating goals. And so value drivers are you interested in speed? Are you interested in increasing capacity of your factories? Because you're growing 10, 15%, and you currently have 100 factories. You don't want to add another 10 to 15 factories. So it's all about how can I use the same people and buildings to get additional output so I don't have to run around and my partners don't have to build extra factories, which is actually a huge carbon footprint on planet Earth. So the first thing is understand what are your key value drivers, and then we go into metrics of how do you really want to change. If it's speed, do you want to go from 60 days to 50 days in manufacturing lead time? Quality, I want to go from X defects per million to Y. Once we get that down, we go into the factory and we ask them the same question. And nobody is at the factory level, very few factories except maybe the billion-dollar groups have thought about this. So it's all about engaging them and having a brainstorm with the top leadership and saying, what do you really want to do in terms of improvement? And we obviously need them to be aligned with the brand retailer. Otherwise, if one is saying speed and the other one is talking whatever, we need to align them. So that's the first step. And then the second step is we sit down based on those values. So let's say if it's productivity, sit down and analyze their current state, and that's normally done with a value stream map, and we do it on one pilot line. And from the very beginning, it's about engaging the management, the middle and top management is involved in actually defining the projects that we're going to help them implement. So we're basically coaching them on first learning the tools like value stream map and line balancing and setting up a supermarket so that internal supermarket so you never run out of materials, setting up preventive maintenance, so the downtime, which is huge in our industry because compared to apparel, there's a lot more equipment. And when you go into a factory, you'd be surprised how much productivity is lost because the machines are down. So all these are what we call the tools. And you could take an industrial engineer straight out of college in the United States, and they could go implement those tools. But the problem is, if you don't teach the factory, especially the middle management, to understand the tools, take ownership, and start implementing themselves, you walk away 6-12 months later, and everything has returned to the before Impactiva state. So it's teaching, so we have a lot of classroom, face-to-face teaching, but after each classroom, so we do a line balancing, there's actually homework. And the homework is where we implement the change management. And change is all about creating new behaviors that create new habits that will bring about new values that will transform the factory's culture. And the values are accountability, discipline, and transparency. Those are the most important. So through the homework, we actually measure whatever we've told them that they have to do. So a line supervisor, or let's give an example, the production manager, does he ever walk the factory floor? So we teach them to do what's called a Gemba walk. So 30 minutes, Mr. Production Manager, we're going to meet you at 8 in the morning in line 1. And we're going to go and explain to you how you walk your factory floor, look at the whiteboards that now are up, that we have trained the line supervisors how on an hourly basis, and in the future it's all going to be digitized. All the metrics, whether it's quality, productivity, and any issues that have arisen during the previous hour, morning or afternoon. So we get them every day to walk the shop floor and start asking and looking at the whiteboards, and when there are issues, calling in the line supervisors. And this is a way for everybody on the shop floor, including the line supervisors, department managers, to understand that the production manager now sees the value of the data and is calling people in to help solve problems. So this is just one little example of homework, and then we actually calculate how many days the production manager actually does that. So after a month, he's supposed to do it 24 days. If he's only doing it 12 times, well, what's prohibiting him from doing it? So we sit down and we try to figure out the defensive mechanisms or obstacles that this person is creating within his or herself to not be able to execute the homeworks. And this is how we create the new behaviors, habits, new values, and change the culture. And that's the big game changer. And when we do this, the transformation you see after 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks in the leadership, the accountability, and discipline is amazing. You can really very quickly change a culture inside a factory. And it's all going back to data, metrics, root cause analysis, corrective action plan, and being engaged in solving problems and building the building one step at a time by permanently eliminating problems, whether it's with machinery, with people, with materials.
So just to reinforce that, I think, kind of unpackaging that for people, there's a lot of people who will fly over and they'll go in their factories, one time every couple of months, maybe. There may be some people that fly over once a year. And kind of what you're saying is you actually need a program and a plan in place, and you got to be there long term. You got to own it so that they understand that you're not going away, that you're invested, that their best interest is your best interest, that you're not just placing an order, but you're creating relationships. And I think that's an important message to pass along, that long gone are the days where you put in the order and you don't go visit and you don't reinforce things and you're not there to make sure it's happening. And in a speed to market world where quality is key, you can't have returns because you lose all your profitability. All those things matter. Those relationships matter. Taking the time to build the trust and build the education models matter. Jose, what else?
Andy, and I can add a good metaphor is when you're raising your children, exactly what you just said. Do you just see them once every 2 months and you expect them to have accountability and discipline and, do their homework and et cetera? No, you're constantly coaching them day after day. And that's the model that we believe in, because if you're really going to transform old cultures and values, the only way is to handhold over time until you get people to do what they have to do, which is accountability and discipline.
Right. What else, what are some of the challenges you guys are constantly in factories? What are some of the stuff that you guys are seeing today that's an issue that people, may have a blind spot to? I mean, some of it is, I think in some areas there's some worker shortages, and other areas there's production issues where capacity is left and you got workers standing around, like you say. Quality issues continue on, like glue issues where bonding's coming apart, things like that. What are you guys seeing that is of interest that you've noticed that you're like, wow, that's pretty interesting?
Well, to me, the main issue, if we talk about quality, is that today with Matt, do you know the latest percentage of footwear that's sold via e-commerce?
Do
you have any idea?
It
more
won't,
or less.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about 20% probably in that range.
Yeah. So 1 out of every 5 shoes are going to people's homes, right? And it's completely different when you'd walk in and say, I want a size 7. Oh, no, it has a scratch, or look at that loose thread, or whatever.
Right.
And can you give me another size 7? Now, when you send it to somebody's home, you're losing, and it has a defect that is recognizable by the consumer. You're deteriorating your brand image, and you could potentially lose the customer. So we believe that the current AQL, which is how the whole industry works, which is based on a sample-based inspection system, and you set an AQL, which is an acceptance quality limit of 1% or 2.5% or 4%, depending if it's a major defect or minor, and depending on if you have a premium brand or a lower-cost brand. The numbers are scary. 10% of your orders, this is all statistics, 10% of your orders can have, depending on what you set your AQLs at, 15 or 20% of defective product. So this is no longer a viable solution. And the car industry went through this in the 80s. In the 90s, the electronics industry transformed itself. And I think now we're at a tipping point where the industry needs to change, but I feel that the industry doesn't realize it needs to change to be able to compete with the Amazons of the world. And this is where we think, Andy, going back to your question, to me, the biggest concern in the factory floor, there's two, is productivity, and I'll describe that now, and quality. Quality, we need to change and create an atmosphere of zero defects. We cannot accept that defects occur and nobody really cares, and it's up to the brand and retailer when they perform their final quality control to reject product, and then it goes to rework. This is no longer a viable solution. And the statistics around the whole military inspection tables are horrendous. And I don't think the industry understands what they're working with, and this is the transformation we're trying to bring about. And then the other one is the productivity. I mean, the last numbers, I tried to research this. I don't know if you guys know, but there was like 60 or 70 million artisans in our industry, if you talk about apparel and footwear. And from what we see in the projects that we go and transform, or in 13 weeks, we can improve productivity 15, 20%. We took a factory in Romania for the Aldo Group and improved its 70% productivity in 13-week time period.
Oh, my gosh.
So if you take, it's scandalous. I mean, for an industrial engineer, it's like, I don't know what the expression is. It's like nirvana, because you go in there and you can. So if you consider 30% of the people aren't required in our industry, you're talking about 20 million people that aren't required. And as the middle classes in China and India grow, we're going to need more capacity to close them and put shoes on their feet. And this will mean that we will need 3%, 5%, 10%, 20% more factories. And you talk about the carbon footprint of that. The industry needs to realize that if it really works on productivity, it could continue to absorb the increased demand without building one more factory for the next probably 10 years. Because then it's not only with lean type principles, but then you start adding robotics, etc. So to me, those are the two big challenges: zero defect and dramatic improvement in productivity in the industry.
I guess you got to lay down the marker, right? You got to say 1%, 2%, 3% defect is not, it's no longer a legitimate goal. You have to throw down the marker of 0% to get people to wake up and realize they got to work a lot harder, yeah?
Yes. I mean, and it's, when people, imagine if 1 out of every, or 2 out of every phone we bought had big issues.
Don't they?
I don't know what the statistic is, but I don't think it's 2%.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there'd be an uproar, right?
Totally.
You're right. Now in Romania, to get the productivity up, did you guys tell them to stop serving beer at lunch and the productivity skyrocketed?
Simple things, man.
Yeah, no nap time in Spain.
I mean, when you have something like that, Jose, and you get results like that, which are amazing, but there's also the flip side of that coin is like, good Lord, we had a lot of improvement. I mean, what does your customer say to that? What does Aldo, or let's just take a hypothetical, what do they say to that? Goodness gracious, where else are things falling flat?
Well, yeah, it's kind of, I mean, everybody's happy, right? Because when you bring about 70% improvement in productivity, 50% improvement in quality, and that's seconds, and it's, except very few factories in our industry, we're going into an Adidas factory now in Indonesia, and within a 4-month time period, we're going to take them from we call it right the first time. That means the total shoes produced on any given day, how many are set aside to be reworked? And we're going to go from 80% to 95% plus in basically 16 weeks. And that's a decent factory for Adidas. You'd be horrified if you do. The other problem in the industry is nobody measures, right?
Right.
So you go to a factory owner producing 2 million pairs in a factory, or 3 or 4, and you ask them what's the right the first time, they have no clue. The only thing they might know is, we get 10% of our orders rejected by the branded retailer. But how many shoes within the line are being set aside and reworked? You'd be scandalized. It'd be 40, 50, 60%. And this is a lack of metrics. So going back to your question, I think everybody's happy because when you bring such tremendous results, then you can split the pie on the improvements, and the factory makes more money, and obviously the brand or retailer is also very happy because they can bring down their FOBs and reduce their quality. And that's the other thing, the problem in the industry, nobody measures the cost of poor quality, which is claims, chargeback, lost sales, being put on probation by the Nordstroms of the world because you had 4 consecutive quality issues. You'd be surprised at what that number is. It's millions and millions and millions of dollars in any company.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we could talk about this all day. In fact, we'll get you back on here soon because there's so many other kind of rabbit holes we can go down with you, Jose. But what is fashionable, before I bring in Jasmine, is going to Impactiva.com because that is Jose's website. It's
or engage with them at our events. Impactiva is a big sponsor of
right.
FDRA and
That's
supporting
right.
the industry, and they're at our events, and you can meet Joseph or any of the other team that are showing up to talk about some of this stuff live and help educate other people in our industry about how to think differently.
That's right. So all that is fashionable, right, Jasmine?
Yes.
So
I have some other fashionable options
all right,
that you may or may not like.
We're gonna not like them, any of them, but lay them on us.
So, as I'm watching Fashion Week, you get like the good stuff that is practical, but then you also get like the crazy shoes that are not so practical. So they have the Vivienne Westwood selfie shoes. So they're boots with an attachment to them for your phone, and you're able to take pictures.
Oh my gosh! Most
Or record a video
self-absorbed.
while you walk.
This is the dumbest thing ever. What's wrong with our society?
Or innovative, whichever way you want to see
Innovative.
it. A couple of other things that I saw was, the mismatched shoe is popular recently, and you'll have a shoe that's like red on the left foot and blue on the other shoe. But now I'm starting to see like a whole like different levels. So you'll have an ankle boot for one of the shoes, and then a shoe that goes past your kneecap. So that's another very interesting thing that I see, as well as a whole tutu around your ankle. I'll show Matt this.
Oh my gosh!
As an option for your shoes. So I'm seeing some very crazy trends. I've seen a lot of, like I've said at another time, like I've seen boots that are really crazy and really creative, but now I'm starting to see
Are
that
these all
people,
made at a factory in Romania? That's my question.
I'll look that up. I'll see what the Vivienne Westwood house is doing.
Jose, are these any trends that you'll be sporting tutus around your ankles, or mixed match boots, or selfie boots?
Actually, those are actually great for rejects, right? You can ship the orange boot with the yellow one.
It's sustainable.
A lot of factories are going to be happy with that trend, Jasmine.
That's hilarious. Quality assurance.
Right. Yeah, so really crazy trends that I'm seeing. They're interesting to look at. They're good things to laugh at if you're not into it. So
Yeah, so we'll be laughing a lot. Well, Jose, we aren't laughing at Impactiva because you guys do the Lord's work when it comes to quality assurance and innovation and being critical thinkers about the supply chain and production, which is hard for companies in the thick of things to do. So thanks for coming in and sharing your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy, Jasmine, and Matt, and we look forward to getting on again in the future.
Cool.
Of course. Folks, this
Take
is
care.
Thank you, sir. Folks, this is Shoe In Show. You can find us shoeinshow.com. You can download and subscribe on any of the major feeds. So, iTunes, on Spotify, on Google Play, anything and everywhere you can download podcasts. You can find us there. If you would like to be a guest, or if you would like us to talk about a specific topic or invite someone on to cover something that's a challenge to your business, drop us a line and let us know. We want to make sure that the topics we have and the speakers we have are discussing key trends and business topics important to you. So, until next time, folks, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.